Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to London, and this is a brewery who I personally rate very highly. They produce some pretty awesome stuff, but unfortunately I don't get to review many of their beers now that I live in Sweden because they just don't come over here. I brought this beer back with me from Scotland. So we're going to go to Weird Beer Brew Company, and tonight we're having a taste of the Tsujigiri, which is a Yuzu IPA. You may recognise this style of beer because of the Brewdog Konnichiwa Kitsune, which was also very nice, but the Yuzu fruit is a Japanese fruit, and it almost tastes a little bit like a combination of mandarin and lemon, and there's a bit of grapefruit flavour in there too. Very high in vitamin C, and it's used a lot in Japan in like cakes and marmalades, and they also use it in some sakes and stuff like that too. It's a very interesting one, and as you've probably heard me mention on the channel before, my girlfriend is Japanese, so I really do love Japanese food. I can't eat fish, which is a little bit limiting. I'm allergic to fish, so that's why you don't see me review oyster stouts as well, but some of the other stuff that they produce in Japan is pretty awesome, and the yuzu marmalades and stuff are absolutely beautiful. But on the subject of Japan and beer as well, go and check out the link in the description to Akihabara, which is Eric and Casey, who live in Tokyo. They're American guys, but they review a lot of Japanese beer. Some videos are in Japanese with English subtitles, and some are in English, so do go and check them out. Their beers and their videos are pretty good, so they're a very good channel to have a look at if you're particularly interested in Japanese beer, and you will see more Japanese beer reviews from me in the summer when I head over there too, so keep an eye out for those, and go and check out Eric and Casey's channel in the meantime. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual websites are in the description below. The brewery website, the link to my other Weird Beer reviews, and there's all the usual social media, Facebook, Twitter and Untappd, so please follow me on there, and do check out the link to Akihabara as well. So to tell you about Weird Beer Brewery, so this brewery, like I mentioned, are from West London, and they were started by two home brewers, Greg and Brian, who'd actually won quite a few awards, and this was what really prompted them to go and turn professional and found their own brewery. And the brewery are now based in the Boston Business Estate in Hanwell in West London, and the guys say that their beers are inspired by both the American and British craft beer movements, and they go out and actively promote their beers in quite a few different places. They're a very active brewery in that regard. They do a lot of tasting sessions, and quite recently they did a few tap takeovers at Brewdog in Camden too, so that's a very good place to go if you want to try some of the Weird Beer. I guess Shepherd's Bush are very good for that as well. But everyone at the brewery apparently also sports some very impressive facial hair. If you look at the photos on their blog, actually, you'll see that. The guys have got the big biker beards that go away down to here, but they're a very good brewery. As I said, these guys are probably one of my favourite London breweries, and they've got a good range of beer too. So in the core range, they've got the Mariana Trench, which is a Pacific Pale Ale, uses all Australian and New Zealand hops, if I remember correctly. There's the Black Pearl, which is a coffee milk stout, 5 o'clock Shadow, which is an American IPA, Fade to Black, which is a beautiful black IPA, I reviewed that before. There's Decadent Stout, Hit the Lights, which is an IPA, Kentish Town Beard, which was a collaboration for Brewdog Camden. Those are all the core range beers, and they do have various other special brews, of which this guy is one. And they also had the Shark Bait as well, which was one of my personal favourites. But as I say, check out the brewery website in the description below, and you will get an idea of all the different things that they do. They're quite a prolific brewery, in fact. But let's move on to a little bit about this beer. So this one is a 6.2% fruit IPA. It was brewed as a collaboration with Dean Pugh from Brewdog Shepherd's Bush, and apparently he had experimented with the Palate brew kit at Brewdog Manchester, and he really wanted to just see how sake yeast would affect the fermentation of beer. And the reason for this was that he'd visited Japan a few months before and taken a look at some of the different sake breweries, and apparently this beer came out of a few meetups. It took them a little while to actually realise the idea for this beer, but they were very determined to actually do it. So the idea behind this was to brew essentially a Japan IPA. So they chose the Japanese hop Soriachi Ace, very well known of course for its kind of lemony citrus flavours, and they chose the yuzu fruit because it's quite well known in Japan and it's used a lot, like I mentioned before. But they also decided to use the Chinook hop from America to complement the flavours that you would get from sake yeast fermentation. And the name of the beer literally translates into English as crossroads killing, and this refers to when samurais would test out their new swords on a passerby, almost like an impulse killing. They say that this beer is a bit of an impulse brew, and it should be very good, like I mentioned. But the yuzu fruit, just to tell you a little bit about that, the yuzu fruit is from Eastern Asia, and it tastes a little bit like mandarin crossed with lemon, and it has a bit of sort of grapefruity or passion fruit, tropical fruit flavours in there too. And it's believed to be a bit of a superfruit because of its exceptionally high vitamin C content, and they're believed to be a hybrid of the mandarin and the Ichang papeda, and they look a little bit like yellow oranges, but they measure between 5 and 7.5 centimetres. They're quite cool little things actually. I've never seen the fruit itself, but I've tasted a lot of things that have yuzu in them, and trust me on this, it tastes very beautiful. So if you come across this beer, I believe it was brewed in May 2015, so it is a little bit older, but if you do come across it, I would recommend that you try it, if nothing else, for the novelty factor. So yeah, this one should be really interesting. It tells you a little bit on the side about the brewery, but that's basically just what I've gone through there. And it tells you on the side about the crossroads killing, what Tsujigiri actually means, and it also tells you a little bit about how they came up with this beer. As I was mentioning, David Pugh from Brewdog Shepherd's Bush. So yeah, it tells you all a bit about that. This is batch number 220, and it's best before August of 2016, bottled in August 2015. So it should be pretty interesting. So I'll just like to have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up, as I always like to do. You can see it has the typical weird beard artwork. It has these nice kind of bearded skulls on the bottom. I always find that quite interesting. These beers all have unique bottle caps as well, so they're very good if you're into collecting these things like I am. It comes in at 6.2%, as I mentioned, yuzu fruit in this one, Soriachi Ace hops from Japan, and Chinook hops from America. So this one should be a very, very interesting beer. So without further ado then, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. So as you can see, nice, really big smoky opening there, and you can smell the nice yuzu fruit coming out of this. It's a very juicy and almost quite wet citrus feel that you get from this one. Citrus aroma, I should say, not citrus feel. But it looks very good. We'll just leave the little bit of that in the bottle just now, and we'll have a look at the colour of this one. So as you can see, this beer is poured a really nice, hazy, goldeny orange amber colour. There's a solid finger and a half, or 2 fingers, of a frothy white head there, and that's probably, I think it's only about half of what or maybe about 2/3 of what I actually poured out of there, but it looks very nice. There's no visible sediment in this, but there is a little bit at the bottom of the bottle. There's some big bubbles sticking to the side of the glass, but they're heading up towards the bottom of that head, and quite a few little ones just heading up there too, but regardless, it looks like a very nice beer. So let's have a look at the aroma on this one. And this is really interesting. Underneath the fruits, you can smell just a little bit of a kind of pale malt, or a bit of bready, kind of yeasty character in this one. There's almost just a little bit of a kind of rice aroma coming out of this one. So it's a bit subtle, but if you pay attention to it and just take a few good smells of this, you will notice it actually. But it smells really nice, this. As I was mentioning, the yuzu fruit gives you this really wet, citrusy note. You can pick up the mandarins in there. You can smell a little bit of the sharper lemony character too. And the tropical fruit, the kind of tropical note is noticeable as well. It almost reminds me a little bit of, it does remind me a little bit of passion fruit actually. It's not quite as sour as grapefruit, but you can pick up a little bit of the sour grapefruit in there, but there's maybe a bit of mango too. There's a bit of the more juicy tropical fruit coming out of this one. And you can pick out just a little bit of the kind of, the sort of spicy aromatic character and the pine resins that you would expect from Chinook. Chinook, of course, is a very, very good American bittering hop. It's really nice. So we'll get the rest of this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting here. I'll just make sure there's still a tiny little bit of it there, but I guess that's enough just now. I'll stuff it. We'll just put the last little bit in. You have to say challenge accepted when it comes to these sort of things. Nice big head on that, as you can see now. But it looks a very, very good beer. So we'll get stuck into this guy and see how we get on. As I always say, give your beers a smell before you actually taste them. It always gives you a good indicator of what's going to go down in the beer. So this one is the Tsujigiri from Weird Beer Brew Company in the west of London in England. Slàinte. Oh, yeah, definitely an interesting flavour this. Let your palate just fully adjust to this one before you start thinking too much about the flavour in this, because it is quite a novelty beer, if you like. It's very unusual, and if you're not used to the yuzu fruit, it does take a little bit of while to actually pick up what exactly is going on in these flavours. But yeah, first thing you'll notice about this beer, once again, Weird Beer Brew Company have not failed here. This is an awesome, awesome beer. And what's quite interesting about this one, a lot of beers that you try when they actually add fruit to the brew, they can be a little bit lacking in hop character. Either that or the hops can overpower the fruit that's in the beer, but they've managed to get the blend here perfectly. It's very well balanced between these more pungent hoppy flavours and the more juicy kind of fruit flavours that you get from actually adding fruit to the brew. They've done that very, very well here, so they must have got the ratios bang on in this beer. But yeah, the malt base on this one, there's not too much to say about this. The middle of your tongue, it's just blanketed with a little bit of a kind of pale malt or bready character, but overall the malt base on this one is not where the focus of the flavour is, but there is a bit of bready character in there. Maybe they've used some pale malt in there or some Pilsner malt, not quite sure, but there's a lot of hoppy character in this one, and that's exactly what you would expect from weird beers when it comes to an IPA. But this is beautiful, really nicely done. So around the edges of the palate, you've actually got quite a wet hop feel to this one. The interesting thing about this beer is that it's drier around the front curve of the palate, and that's where some of these spicy, floral and aromatic characters are coming out of this beer. There is a bit of pine resin, but around the edge of the tongue, this beer is actually very, very juicy. That's the interesting thing, and that'll be because of the fruit additions there. The fruit character kind of pushes its way inward from the tongue a little bit, but for me, the front curve of the tongue is actually really quite dry in this beer. But the pine resins and the floral aromaticity in this one just give it a very nice underpinning. But on top of that, these yuzu fruit flavours are very nice. You can get a little bit of the lemony citrus that I was talking about from the Soriachi Ace. The Soriachi Ace does lemon flavours really quite well. You often expect them to be very sharp, but this one just blends it together really well. And the yuzu fruit juicy flavours in this are very interesting. Just behind the front curve of that tongue, you'll get a little bit of an oily bubble, and you can feel the citrusy flavours coming out of there. There is a teeny bit of grapefruit from the Chinook hop too. The Chinook, obviously, pine resins, spicy aromaticity, and a little bit of grapefruit you're going to get from that. But the Soriachi Ace hop has a lot of floral aromaticity itself, but it has a nice, quite distinct lemony character, and you can really detect that underpinning the beer. And on top of that, you're getting these more juicy yuzu fruit flavours in this. And it goes together really quite well, actually. These fruity characteristics are very nice. As I said, the yuzu has a very distinct flavour. It's almost somewhere between a mandarin, a lemon, and a little bit of tropical fruit in there. There is a bit more of a kind of juicy tropical fruit in comparison to the grapefruit though. I think there is a little bit of a mango flavour to the yuzu. That's just my personal taste, if you like. As I always say, beer and flavours are subjective, so you might detect slightly different things from me, but the yuzu flavour is very distinct. Personally, I think it's a little bit more of a juicy tropical fruit flavour. Like I said, maybe mangoes, maybe a little bit of the kind of apricot or peachy flavour in there as well, but there is a little hint of that more sour and more, how do you say, more pungent, I guess, tropical fruit, like the passion fruit and the grapefruit. But all of these flavours go together very well, and they come out on top of these hops in this beer absolutely beautifully. This is a very, very good beer from Weird Beer, and I would expect nothing less from these guys. They produce some really awesome stuff. But this is beautiful. If this is only a limited edition beer, it is a bit of a shame because it is very, very nice. So hopefully it returns at some point. But I don't know if Weird Beard really do that, because the guys have a sort of home brewing mentality. They like to just play about with things and see how they turn out. And often like this, they produce some pretty awesome stuff. But the downside is you're only going to see these beers once. But in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer, I would say it's definitely mid-bodied. This is a beer I think you would want to serve it maybe a little bit around probably 7-8 degrees, I guess, is a good temperature for this one. It's got a very smooth mouthfeel, this, and it suits the flavours that are going on here. You've got a bit of carbonation, but not too much. It helps bring out some of the piney and floral aromaticity in the beer. Quite oily. This beer would actually be beautiful as a cask ale, in my opinion, with just a little bit more of that big body. This beer would work very, very well with that. But there's a big hoppy dryness to this one, particularly around the front of the tongue, but there's a good fruity, juicy character which comes out on the back sides and as you move into that little area behind the tongue. But there's very little malt presence in this one. There is a bit of bready and yeasty character. I thought there maybe would have been a little bit of a ricey flavour, but there's not really much of that at all in this beer. There is, maybe there is a little bit, but yeah. Now overall, it really is just a light kind of bready malt base in there. But I mean, overall, this beer is pretty damn awesome, fully deserving of its high score of on Rate Beer. I think it was 94 it had when I checked it out, but it's a very, very good beer if you do come across it. It's something quite unusual. The yuzu fruit is a bit of a novelty fruit at the moment, so this is one that you definitely want to try. And if you're interested in Japan as well, I guess this is a kind of good way to actually get into it and see what some of their flavours are all about in their cuisine. So yeah, it's another really awesome beer from Weird Beer Brew Company. It's interesting as well to try something that's a bit of a novelty from them too. And this is probably one of the best IPAs I've tried that has fruit blended into it. They've got the balance of the ratios here. Very, very well done in my opinion. So yeah, go and check out Weird Beer Brew Company. As always, if you have tried this beer before, let me know your own thoughts. And as I said as well, check out Akihabara in the video description below if you want to see some Japanese beer reviews. This has been another really awesome beer. Let me know your own thoughts on it. And in the meantime, until the next review, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and check out my social media things, and I'll catch you soon with my next beer review. Go and check out Weird Beer Brew Company and go and try some Japanese food with some nice yuzu fruits. It's really interesting and it's very good for you as well, so it's an excuse to drink some good beer. Slàinte just now, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers. Kanpai.